Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Our Life. I know my hair's a little wild. I just did it in time for Christmas. I really like how this color turned out. It was supposed to be pastel blue. Well, actually, it's technically called aqua blue, and I'm not upset over it. Though I was thinking it'd be a little more cotton candy, but I think it'll get there with some washes. But it's really pretty. So there's that. But we're gonna hop back into Our Life, and we should be finishing up this the first DLC for Derek. Sorry. And I'll still have my old hair color because I recorded this weeks ago. All right, without further ado, let's hop in. You picked up the pace and raced to the pool gate. For the third time, a single day, you and Derek set foot on the condo's complex private pool deck, but you soon realized that hadn't seen everything it had to offer yet. Under the cover of night, the pool was completely aglow with lights set into the bottom. The bright blue struck you as inviting breath of steam dripped off the water, whispering how warm it was. The closed-in space was clear of any other people, and it had been like that for a while considering the stillness of the pool. Not a single ripple disrupted in its aquamarine surface. Here you'd have peace and privacy. Derek was drawn to the water like a moth to flame. He weirdly rolled up his jeans and tugged off his sneakers and socks, then dunked his feet right into the pool up to the middle of his calf. He stretched and wiggled his bare toes in the comfort embrace of the heated pool. On a summer night, you joined Derek at the edge. We're gonna dip our feet in. You know, it's nice. You removed your own shoes and let your feet soak in the pool. It was as pleasant as its sparkling appearance promised. The water had a tone, none of the slight chill that the air did. It was the perfect amount of heat. Derek wrapped both his hands around the smooth tile edge and tilted back one of his legs, kicked up as his back drifted down. His upper and lower body were each one side of a seesaw. He grinned playfully at you.
But
So, what were you talking about? So, what were we talking about? Oh, I don't remember. You were saying you couldn't manage to put words together in a spot. Oh, I don't remember. Oh well, it's not your fault. He solemnly brought his torso back up until he was hunched over the water. He stared down at it. All his lightheartedness had disappeared in an instant. The kind that kind of makes the whole interruption thing even more sucky though. There wasn't any heart in it, but Derek managed to chuckle. Sorry for making my problems your problems. He dug his fingers into the side of his hair, scratching at it in
it
frustration.
doesn't matter.
I don't even know what my problem is. They came in the room for 5 seconds. I'm so dramatic. Derek, that's not dramatic, and it wasn't the only thing that happened today. Nicholas is dramatic. You're mild, you joked. You deal with a lot of problems. It annoyed me, and I don't even live here. You leaned closer to show you were here to listen. Your gaze focused firmly on Derek, shifted his body partly away from your attention, but he didn't ignore it. Derek crossed his arms tight and pushed them against the top of his legs. The blue water rippled around him as his legs moved against the pool while he pressed his heels into it. The pressure that had been on the inside was coming out. It's just the thing is, Nicholas and George need me all the time, and my parents need me because they need me. I don't want to let them down. I really don't. But it's hard. Every day is like I'm going to mess up and disappoint somebody. He bit his tongue and released his limbs from the locked position they'd been stuck in. He couldn't scrub the furrow away from his brows.
Forget it.
Forget it. Everyone has to suffer to worry about it. It's not just me. Mom has to take care of them way more than I do, and Dad works a job pretty much the entire day. I admire you. You don't have to brush yourself off. Your family is lucky to have you. So what if they do things too? You still deserve to be happy. It's not fair for you to think like that. Place a supportive hand on your shoulder. We admire
I
him.
don't know.
I don't know why. He went silent, unmotivated. Nicholas was the one who caused trouble, but somehow Derek had made himself the bad guy. It was upsetting, but Derek wasn't anywhere close to really being grown up. Of course, he couldn't be perfect, even though he acted like he thought he should be. Derek, remember when your dad first came to the pool and you, George, and Nicholas were all so excited? You were just like your brothers. Even if you're in charge sometimes, you're still your parents' kid. You don't have to act like an adult, especially not with me. Finally, Slow and carefully, Derek dared to glance at you. Thanks, Ari, for saying that. His shoulders squashed inward to frame his lower head. He looked so much like a hopeful puppy that he could give even Nicholas a run for his money in the adorable face department.
Was it annoying?
It really doesn't bother you that I complain and sometimes hang out with me means helping out with 2 other kids? For all that confidence Derek displayed when he push came to shove, he was pretty insecure about himself and what you thought of him. Not at all. Complain away. As long as you don't mind dealing with Elizabeth when you visit me. That's right. Derek, I love hanging out with you no matter what. I'll babysit as many times as you need. You nod seriously. I like the Elizabeth one. I also like this one. I also like this one. Let's go with this one. Derek showed his full face to you. It was all lit up by the light shining through the water. The smile on his face was just as glittering. I don't want to be a pain, but it's really cool to have a friend who doesn't mind listening to me and being there. He didn't say that lightly. He only wanted to let himself be there for you and everyone else. Being somebody Derek could count on was special. You wouldn't let him down. Then his eyebrows furrowed mischievously, and like that, he catapulted right off the tire ledge into the pool. You gasped as if you were the one who suddenly plunged into the water. Derek burst up through the surface with a loud, gasping laugh. The water is great. How wonderful. You're way too impulsive sometimes. Are you okay? You broke into laughing. You shook your head at Derek spontaneously. Are you gonna get in trouble? Not too badly. Derek, everything is gonna be good, Ari. I'm not an adult. That was true. You pushed yourself right off after him. You carefully lowered yourself in it. You splashed Derek from the ground. You watched him enjoy the water, staying dry yourself. Let's go after him. In an instant, you were hit with an explosion of bubbles as you sunk down into the water. You waited until you felt the pool floor, then kicked off it and popped your head out of the water. Woo! Derek pumped both fists in the air with his black wristband drooped further down his arm, heavy from being soaked. The 2 of you paddled through the water together, and then added weight of your clothes, and you both winded pretty quickly. That only amused Derek more. Laughter and sloshing water brought the once stagnant pool to life. You and Derek still had a place to yourself, made it absolute most of it. But eventually Derek crawled up the stairs out of the pool. His baggy clothes poured out many waterfalls with every step he took on land. Derek looked especially tiny, with his drenched jersey draped over his frame. He waited there at the top of the steps for you to catch up, being the dripping gentleman he was. You held the rail with each step up the stairs. You felt the weight of your soaked clothes pressing down on you more and more. You got a thumbs up from Derek when you made it out. Ugh. Then he carefully tipped his head to the side and tapped his hand against his ear to get the water out.
Well,
All right, time to face the music. Having to go home dampened Derek's mood far more than the water on his body. He couldn't do anything here in the wild open pool with you as his only companion. Going back to his family came with countless expectations and responsibilities, but it still had to be done. Yeah. You gave a small nod, readying yourself for whatever might happen. You arrived at the Suarez' condo. Without another word, you collected your shoes, and you left the little oasis behind. 2 of you walked side by side. I want to hold hands. His slippery fingers gripped you tightly as they could. When you made it to the front door, Derek used a key from his pocket to open it. He hadn't forgotten to bring it, despite leaving under rushed and uneasy circumstances. Derek stood there in front of the unlocking door, just staring at it. Practical preparation was his forte. Making himself ready for bumps in relationships was not. You didn't do anything wrong, Derek. You've got nothing to feel bad about. They do. Remember that? Yeah. He took in a huge breath through his nose and turned the knob. The living room was quiet when you went inside. George and Mr. Suarez had moved over to the kitchen, and they were busy putting together a puzzle. Mr. Suarez's shoulder blocked your view, so you couldn't see what the picture was supposed to be. Mr. Suarez and Nicholas were nowhere in sight. You guessed they were still in the younger boy's bedroom. It was strange not to have someone cheer and shout when Derek walked through the door. There was a feeling of absence. We're back. He announced himself with an absolute lack of enthusiasm. He might as well have been calling off bingo numbers to an empty room. Oh my god. I feel that though. Lifted his head and turned to his. At the same time, he eagerly pushed his chair away from the counter. I see. Thank you for coming home. The greeting he gave was so normal that it was weird, considering how you and Derek each brought a bucket of water absorbed into your clothes. George offered a typical family greeting of his own, not taking his eyes off the puzzle. He was either focused or avoiding the awkwardness.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Derek silently poked a big toe into the prickly entry doormat. The mess Derek's foot was making was too much for the little mat to contain, and water leaked out from the edges. Derek's attempt to face his family was going equally smoothly. The bright pleasantries on Mr. Swear's face softened into the warmth. He followed through on the motion. He stirred and got out of his chair. He crossed the living room to stand with the two of you at the front door. My hardworking son is always in demand, Our family needs to learn how to share, especially Nicholas. The last part was said with a little chuckle. Derek didn't smile from the compliment, but he did start to blush.
Excuse me.
Excuse us. A new voice came from the hall. Miss Schwartz stood there, with a hand on her hip. Peeking out from behind the skirt of her dress was a distinct spiky nest of brown hair. Now that you're here, someone has something he wants to say to his big brother. Her words got George to actually turn away from his puzzle and watch the scene, but Nicholas remained hidden. Her encouragement wasn't enough. As always, he was waiting for Derek. You didn't need to tell Derek that, though. He knew it far better than you. He shifted his weight on his feet and gave Nicholas an invitation. Okay then, what did you want to say? Nicholas started out from behind his mom with enough speed to flutter her dress. His tiny feet thundered over the floor until he came to an abrupt stop right in front of his favorite person. He had to lean his head all the way back to look into Derek's eyes, and Derek looked down to meet his gaze. Nicholas resisted the urge to hug him and instead clutched the collar of his own shirt. I'm sorry, that's your room. From how much Nicholas struggled to explain his apology, it was obvious he wasn't at the point where he understood why being together all the time wasn't a completely fantastic idea. All that had gotten through was that he'd upset his brother, and that had, in turn, upset him. Nicholas bit his lip and moved his hand to pull the bottom of his shirt instead of the top. The best he could come up with next was simply repeating himself. Sorry. Derek's lip quirked in a bit, just a bit as he patiently listened to his little brother. You should say sorry to them too. Ari helped you a lot today too. Nicholas instantly twisted his head towards you and echoed the words. He was very serious. Sorry, Ari. Thank you, Nicholas. No worries. I appreciate that you apologized. You smiled at him. You had to look away in shyness. Tell him that we appreciate it. Nicholas hopped up on the pad of his feet as nervous but hopeful energy came over him. Your reaction was the first positive sign he'd gotten. The smallest Suarez glanced between you and Derek unsurely. He let his shirt go and balled fist into his hand. I'm sorry, Derek. I'm sorry, Ari. Nicholas put everything he had into willing whatever problem he caused to be fixed and into people not feeling bad anymore. The emotional display of regret moved someone in the room to speak.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry too. Derek snorted and laughed at the unexpectedness of the interjection. What did you even do? I don't know. The middle child looked down at the puzzle in front of him again, but he was staring through the pieces as if they weren't there. He murmured just barely loud enough to hear from where you were standing. You and Ari had to watch me today too. Derek's hesitancy completely crumbled, and his usual family dynamic came back in full force. Aw, George, you don't have to apologize for that. I like to have some time by myself or with my friends, but I'd never want to stop having my little bros. Nicholas massively widened, his eyes sparkled. For the first time since they were reunited, he carefully reached out to Derek and gripped his soaking wet jeans. Derek reached down and gently patted his baby brother's head, as he did probably every day. Neither boy cared at that time that the hand was damp. Reading! Eyes! Work! This is long, guys. Ooh. Instead, they both smiled at the other with unwavering affection. No matter what fissions happened, it was inevitable that it would end that way. because they both loved their family equally and deeply. Another person took a turn to cut in, and Mr. Suarez spoke up with vigor. Derek, Ari, let's race. What? Derek chuckled at your confusion and switched his head pattern to full-on hair ruffle. Nicholas giggled excitedly along with his brother. Dad is asking us to play a video game, an old kart racer he likes. Yeah, yes, and I will win it. Derek's dad cheerfully tacked that on. It couldn't be forgotten clearly. George could be player 4. Miss Suarez was the only one who truly kept her distance during the reconciliation between Derek and Nicholas, but now she joined the rest of the family. When she was close enough to you and Derek, she whispered. She pressed a hand to the corner of her mouth and winked conspiratorially. I'll give Nico an unplugged controller. Derek grinned at that point and shifted into giving the longest strand of Nicholas's hair a friendly tug. But he didn't accept the invite immediately. He included you in the discussion. What do you think, Ari? Are you kidding? I think we should race. He nodded at you and turned to answer his father. All right, let's race. Derek's mom encouraged you and Derek with her words, and Nicholas with her hands, taking him by the shoulders. This time he wouldn't be letting him get away from her. Go get changed. We'll plug it in so it'll be ready by the time you're back. Ari, you're welcome to use my or Miss Suarez's pajamas if Derek doesn't have anything you can borrow. It'll be big, but it's better than nothing. Thanks, Mom. Derek's mood continued to be buoyed by the support of his parents, and he let go to get changed while walking as lightly as he could in his wet clothes. He followed the watery footprints he left behind to dry off too. He did a quick change while you waited in a towel wrapped around you to minimize clothes dripping. He came out of his room wearing a black sweatpants with a matching top. Now that he wasn't spilling water everywhere, he offered to get you something to wear. Derek rattled off what kind of pajamas his family had on hand. He apologized twice for the fact that he was so much shorter than you and had nothing you could fit in. You reassured him that it wasn't his fault. You were the one who chose to get wet when you didn't have an extra pair of clothes of your own. Ultimately, Brad's sleeping gown from Miss Suarez, button down and pajama pants from Mr. Suarez. It was extremely baggy considering the design of it was more proper looking than most other types of PJs. The melted way it looked on you was extra funny. What mattered most was that you were finally warm and dry. Your skin still had lingering goosebumps from your dip in the pool. Derek gave you a friendly thumbs up. He was nothing but polite about your outfit situation. He bundled up the pile of wet clothes and carried them off to the laundry. He spoke over his shoulders as he walked as fast as he could with the dripping clothes in his arms. I'll get your stuff back to you next time I visit, okay? Okay. As promised, the Suarez dark purple GameCube was fully connected with 4 controllers plugged in by the time you and Derek strolled into the living room wearing new digs. A familiar shout filled the whole room as it all was right in the world. Derek's back! Yep, Nico, I'm here. Miss Suarez was on the carpet with Nicholas in her lap. She already passed him a controller, and he was having a blast pressing the clicky button despite the fact they did nothing except make a little noise. George and Mr. Suarez took a seat on the couch. George tucked himself closely against his father, so the two of you were only taking up one side. The other half of the couch was reversed for you and Derek. Derek dove into the spot next to George. He got settled in nicely against the plush back of the couch and folded his legs up across the cushion. You got in the final place and relaxed against the armrest. Ah, would you look at that? Yeah, that should be GameCube. That looks right. Ooh. I don't know if y'all knew this, but I worked at a retro video game store for a little bit. And I freaking love cleaning consoles just because I love getting all the dirt out of the little grit lines in the perfect. George passed one controller to Derek, with which Derek gave to you. Then he handed over a second, which Derek kept. Mr. Suarez filled you in on a decision he and his second son had made.
What do you think?
Junior and I are on a team. You and Ari can play together. What do you think? Derek tilted his head your way. He lifted his shoulders and added on to his dad's briefing. It's a double racer. One drives, the other controls items. Sounds cool. I love that game. You smiled understandingly. This is gonna be good. You shrugged acceptingly. This is gonna be intense. Definitely. It's me and you then. The deal was sealed. Pact had been made. George perked up and shook Mr. Suarez's arm. Hey, Dad, we're Team Suarez. Yes, we are. Derek's fingers were on the buttons, and he was leaning over his crossed legs in anticipation for the game to begin. He replied unbothered. Cool for you guys. Team Pain is a force to be reckoned with. All four players made up the two teams, choosing their characters, carts, positions, and the track set. To start, Derek and Mr. Suarez were driving, and you and George had item launching duty. 3, 2, 1. The carts launched across the starting line, with both drivers getting with both drivers getting an extra boost. Team Pain, Team Suarez were off down the colorful jungle road. I hope y'all understand that this is Mario Kart on the Nintendo GameCube. If y'all don't, I think you're a little too young to be watching this. There would be 3 laps before the race was over. Lap 1 was frantic race for the top spot. The carts were neck and neck to each other over every hill and around every curve, neither getting ahead or falling behind. Attacks were constant exchange, and the buttons were pressed at rapid speeds. That included Nicholas as he watched the race and tried to use his controller the way everyone else was. You wondered which part of the game he thought he was impacting. By lap 2, Team Pain had taken a strong lead. Almost nothing from the Suarez camp could reach your cart. Once he passed the line to start set 3, Derek was cocky enough to bring out the smack talk. I thought you were gonna win, Dad. Mr. Suarez's expression was perfectly content. More than that, it was serene. And it was with that calm face Derek's father carefully reached across George and then, in a blink of an eye, locked his large hand around the properly tiny controller Derek had. Hey! The cart you and Derek shared went out of control, greening off the dirt path into the pit. You had to wait for the game to finish, fish you out, and place you back on the road. Team Suarez had rolled on right past. See, I'm winning now. Derek's dad was boldly unapologetic. He grinned like a child who just found out you could get a hole-in-one at putt-putt golf if you just dropped the ball in the hole. You're cheating now. Derek sputtered with laughter made of equal parts amusement and disbelief. He yanked his arms towards his chest to fight for freedom, but Miss Suarez's grip was unmovable. We're running interference, huh? From a distance, Miss Suarez mused over the situation that had begun to unfold. Her husband stole a look at her when she'd been sitting. She was gone, leaving only Nicholas on the floor. Miss Suarez lifted one thick eyebrow and pressed the other lower. He could only puzzle over what it might mean, but until it all became clear by the world going dark for him only him. Derek's mom had crawled over behind the couch, popped up from behind, then slipped her fingers under Suarez's glasses and caught completely off guard. Ah! His father stirred from the shock of surprise. Tack wasn't committed by himself. Yeah, Mom. Derek had gotten his controller back. Mr. Suarez was stubborn in his hold of his dad, was just as incapacitated as the driver. Yeah, Mom. An echo of Derek's cheer came from behind. All the excitement in the air had stirred a fire in Nicholas. He wasn't just playing an off-controller anymore. He crawled on all fours at a rapid pace until he reached the couch and launched himself right at his dad's stomach. It was powerful enough that Miss Suarez sprung forward, and Miss Suarez's hands were yanked off him. Ooh! But Derek's controller was finally freed, and Miss Suarez had to let go of both controllers to catch his squirming child. Nicholas would not be contained. He climbed up and over his dad's shoulders and wrapped his arms around Miss Suarez's face. In sweet justice, the Team Suarez cart flew off bridge into the abyss below. Yeah, Nicholas. George placed his own controller in his lap with a shake of his head and smirked. Team Suarez wasn't winning this race. Derek rolled his shoulders and poked a tongue out of the corner of his mouth. In concentration, he was back in business. The Team Payne cart course corrected and raced towards the finish line of the final lap. The inner Suarez hugged all four of his limbs around his dad, even tighter from the thrill of seeing Derek speed his cart around the track. Yeah! Items weren't needed now, but you were just as invested in watching your cart make the last stretch, and Derek brought it home, crossing the finish line. We won! Derek threw his fist into the air, pumped them back down his chest, and turned to you with a palm held out to smack. You clapped his hand, you hugged him, gave him a thumbs up. Here's your hand to slightly cover your face. We're a hugger. We hug in this house. You ignored the hand and flung your arms around his neck. He squeezed you back, pressing his face into your shoulder. You were victorious. We won. Nicholas sent his arms up towards the sky, a perfect imitation of his eldest brother. Mr. Suarez used the opportunity to collect his son from off his shoulders and placed Nicholas into his lap. He pet his son's hair, and he laughed breathlessly but full of joy. Okay, I lost. Next race. This time, Derek repeated the phrase, still raring to go. But that was naturally followed by the original copycat. Nicholas clapped gleefully and snuggled up against his seat in his father's chest. Next race. George picked up his abandoned controller once more. His voice was quieter, but no less sincere. Yeah, next race. In all the commotion, you'd completely forgotten you could have switched to driver role to take over for Derek at any time. George could have too for his dad, but you were glad it went the way it did. Team Payne got its win with the assist of team pilot drivers Nicholas and Miss Suarez, and the game was just getting started. Next race. You couldn't help join the pattern. It got big smiles from the family. Well, now, this is a real party. There's still pizza in the fridge. Who wants leftovers? The suggestion of food riled Nicholas up even more. He climbed over his dad's shoulders for the second time, tugging on his beard, accidentally knocking his glasses off. Miss Suarez wheezed out a chuckle. Nicholas started out from over the couch into the kitchen. He wanted that pizza, but couldn't be the first to ask. I do. Pizza, please. I will have leftovers, you said, just for Nicholas's sake. You looked over at the other Suarez boys. I do. I'm excited. I want more food. I do. Ooh. I do.
Same.
Me too. George and Mr. Suarez chimed in their own request. Can I have some, Mom? I would like some pizza. My beloved wife, who never turns against me. She snickered with a glint in her eyes. Of course. Start the game. I'll heat it up. All four of the Suarez men spoke in unison. Thanks, Mom. Thank you, too.
Welcome.
You're welcome. The players all resumed their positions and took up their tools, slightly sweaty GameCube controllers. When the second race started, the grin on Derek's face was one of the most radiant you'd seen the whole day. His dad, mom, and brothers, too, really knew how to make Derek happy. And that brought a smile to your face, too. From getting a window into Derek's life, and from what you knew from your own, spending every day with the same people could take a lot of patience, but there were a lot of perks, too. Your time with the Suarez household ended with family food and fun. There wasn't much more you could have asked for. Oh my god. That ended up being so long. To be fair, that's also partially my fault. So, I don't know if I'm going to edit this into one part or two. You'll find out when this uploads. You'll find out if this is labeled part 2. Because I did end up doing like 2 40-minute recordings. So, I hope you enjoyed. And if you did, come back next time to see more of this. Next, we'll be doing one of the normal ones. And then we'll flip-flop back and forth between the DLC and the normal ones that are free for the game. That way I can keep it a little interesting. That way it's not all Derek content. It's not all Cove content. And I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.